start?
let's
What do you think?
I think let's go for it.
Awesome, awesome.
So
And
I'll
Pithu
just
is going to be listening to my
introduce one.
voice as well as all of you guys can be
Hi
listening to
everybody,
them.
welcome to the session. This is the first of hopefully many webinars we are trying to do with our alumni so that they can share their experiences and their journeys post campus. And Joe has been very kind enough to be the first one to come on board, especially during this lockdown. And so we have Joe here and Arjun, who's also helping us moderate along with Vaibhav and so on. So we'll keep this casual. Please feel free to use the chat feature for any questions, and we'll try and answer as many questions as we can in the time that Joseph has today for us. Thanks, guys. Enjoy yourselves. Bye. Over to you, Joe.
Awesome. Okay, so there's 76 of us currently. Before we kick off, I just wanted if Pranav, Arjun, Vaibhav, you can just do a quick understanding of the kind of batch of people who are here before I start. I think I can take 2 minutes. By that time, the room should also fill up, I hope. If you guys can see all the participants, that is, and randomly pick a few. Let's see who all are here, from which
We can
batches.
all. Yeah.
Arjun, any bright ideas on how you want to do this?
No, so for the chat feature, guys. So anybody who can hear us, just come
Yeah,
in and put in your batch video.
lovely.
Okay, I'm getting some feedback that you need to join with audio. So just make sure you're joining the meeting with audio so that your speakers can hear all of us. Okay, we have some feedback, Joe, in the chat.
I can't see any in the chat
12,
actually.
14, 18, 13.
Oh, lovely.
Y-
Nice.
You're going to feel old very soon now.
Oh, man, yeah. This is like some super fachas who are joining in.
Yeah, about a decade.
Okay. At least there's a
I can see even
2009.
the current students are joining in.
Yeah,
We have around 60 people on YouTube Live.
nice, nice.
Great. We're up to 90 now over here.
We're up to 90. Okay, I think we can kick off then.
Yeah.
So, guys, so basically, before we kick off, I think before I even share my presentation that I have, I think all of us are sick and tired of seeing presentations. But let's anyway talk about. Let's get to that in a while. These are interesting times. I think that's the mildest way in which I can put it. These are genuinely interesting times, and I think it's a great time to talk about the time to come, about the future, as well as the stories and the things we know from the time gone by. So, firstly, thank you, Pranav and Vaibhav and everyone else who put in this effort to invite me over. I'm looking forward to this next 1 hour of interaction, if not more. Before I kick off, quick introduction. I'm going to share my screen anyway, because the first slide literally has the most relevant part of this. So basically, I am a PGP 2007 graduate, and when I went to Indore, it was a very peaceful little place. It's nowhere close to the kind of the campus that exists today, or the kind of classroom size that you guys have. Arjun and Pranav are my direct juniors from back in the day. They were a batch of 180. We were a batch of less than 120 people. That's how many folks were there. And in the middle of all this, we uh, we somehow got to a place where how many people guys there? How many participants on
About
campus now?
600 per batch now.
600 per batch. Yes. So we've come a long way. I think that's the mildest way I can put it.
And
So
Joseph, that's only PGP. We have many other programs as well.
what are these other programs?
This is a 5-year integrated program in management, IPM.
Uh-huh.
This is a Mumbai batch as well of PGP.
Okay.
And the management and EPGP are anyways there. So we are a total of like about 8,000 people, 8,000 alumni
Wow.
from Indore now.
Wow. Guys, I'm just, one second. I'm just figuring out how, I think YouTube is facing an issue. Give me 1 minute while I do some, while I do some basic,
Wizardry.
I mean, in whatever way I can. Okay, hold on. Window capture. Sorry for the silence, guys. I'm just figuring something out for YouTube so that they can catch in on the session as well. Yes, awesome. Okay, I think YouTube should be seeing this just about now. Folks on YouTube who are joining in, what's the YouTube chatter like? What are people saying on chat boxes over there?
She's saying hi to
Okay, I guess we are all here. 1 second. You guys can see my presentation, right? Guys?
You'll have to. It's a black screen Joe right now with just with text on. That's what I think.
With Joseph Radik PGP class of 2007.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's answer
Now
this
this is
question.
interesting.
Okay, brilliant. So let's answer this question. I love how there is a lot of hype built over this. I think the Alumni Association made some very tall claims about some very big words were used to describe me. So in the middle of all that, I would like to answer this very important question as to who am I, right? And before we get there, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm still figuring out YouTube. I think YouTube is still facing some issues. Hopefully it should work. I think YouTube is having some window scaling problems in life. So there's a lot of nonsense going on. To the Zoom guys who have joined in, please bear with me. I think this 1 hour call will become a 75-minute because of this. All right, I think we can start. Guys, are we done with everyone being admitted to the room?
Yeah, we actually have only 100, so we're actually full now.
We're full. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. So let's start. Yeah. So on the 25th of June 1983, India won the World Cup. It was a monumental occasion. But little did you guys know that the next day, another bigger event that would happen would completely erase this moment from history. I was born on the 26th of June 1983. And it was a brilliant occasion. As you can see, I was already a stud when, at a small age. And this was me a few years later posing for a family photo. I think through the course of this little conversation that we're going to have, I'm also going to show you the importance of photography in my life and how easy it is to just take it for granted, I think. I was always a thinker. I used to be a very serious thinker, as you can see from here. This is with my brother. And I was also very much into fashion, as you can see here, right? Those are exciting times. This was also the time when I was 5 years old when I was diagnosed with a medical complexity called encephalitis, which is a medical term for brain fever, essentially, right? And I recovered from the brink of death, and I think from then onwards I have lived a life which, in no little terms can I say, has been nothing short than blessed. And I have learned to count my blessings along the way. And for the next 20 minutes, whatever I'm going to talk to you for the course of the 35 years I've lived on this planet, all of it is literally just me counting my blessings. So everything I'm telling you, that's exactly what I'm doing. These are two photos from when I was, I think, 4 years old, and much later. As you can see, that's my brother with me holding suitcases, and we were ready to travel the world. And that's us 30 years later getting coached on how to use a camera by my mom. Not really, she's just seeing a photo. In 1993, my Peddamma, that's my aunt, returned from Austria and got a box full of National Geographic magazines as her gift from Austria. Now, typically as kids of that age, you are really happy when you're gifted toys. but I don't know why, but I was really excited when I got that box, because those magazines had literally some of the most amazing photographs I had ever seen in my life, and I ended up taking cutouts of those photos and placing them in a scrap box. Little did I know that years later I would actually pick up this art. I was just doing it because I was thinking, oh my god, how cool would it be if, to be in those places and to go to those places. A few years later, after finishing my schooling, I ended up in an engineering college. This is how an engineering college typically in Hyderabad looks like. Basically, there's nobody who's attending, everybody's bunking, and we were a class of 75 people or something. And this is funnily, this is all I saw. This used to be my view every day.
Wow.
Right after engineering, I ended up going to this beautiful little campus on a hill called IIM Indore. As all of you would know, and all of you would hopefully nod at this point, you do know that we spent basically 2 years in what I call a paid vacation. So I had no posh camera with me at that point in time, but because my batch was so diverse that it had some really old people, they had some really expensive cameras with them. So within the first week of me getting to Indore, I stole one of those cameras. During my days in engineering, I would take my camera to college every single day, and that was exactly how my time at Indore was spent. I started a Flickr page with a very funny username. We will not talk about that. But every single day I would be making photos in the hostel. You can see one of my close friends, Mahesh, who was my neighbor in here. This is another one of my neighbors, this praying mantis. There's a photo of a fly trap from campus. I don't even know. Yeah, there's Saurabh Mundra, and there's this photo of the guard, whatnot. So all these photos are still publicly available. I'm going to drop them in the chat. I'm going to drop my Flickr page in the chat here. I only want you to see that because I want you to know the beginnings. This was still my first 6 years of photography, and this is literally what photography meant to me. From campus, I was placed in a company called Colgate-Palmolive, where I was literally selling toothpaste. I was based out of a city called Banaras, and Banaras is old, man. Banaras is old, and in 2008, there was literally no entertainment there. And as the area sales manager of East UP, I didn't have the luxury of taking my camera out during the days. So I would literally take it out in the nights, go to the nearest railway station and make some photos. I would also spend Saturdays and Sundays, actually only Sundays, because in sales you have a 6-day work week. Sundays going to the villages around and making some photos. It was during this time that I had a conversation with my boss, and he thought that this conversation would be very helpful in me planning my career and also doing justice to my role that time. I won't tell you the full conversation, but in effect, it had two key questions. He was like, "How old are you, and when do you plan to retire?" I said, "Shobit, I'm 25. I don't know, I'll retire when I'm 55, 60. He's like, "Joe, okay, 60, 65 is a good time to retire. You're not going to retire before that. Life will come to you. You'll have a lot of expenditure and whatnot." I said, "Okay, what are you getting at?" Shobit was like, "Joe, you're 25 today and you are going to retire at 65. That means you have 40 years more to live. That means you have 40 years more to work. So that means you have 15 years more than all the time you spent on planet Earth just to spend in a career." Okay? And he was telling me this because he wanted me to slow down. He wanted me to spend more time in each role. Those who are in FMCG will understand this. You quickly go from role to role to role. Every year is a new role, literally. And then eventually you end up as director or whatever designation your company gives you, right? So, but the first 15 years are very similar for everyone. And Shobit was like, "Joe, whatever you do, slow down, because 15 years from now, when you are the director, some kid is going to come up to you and ask you a basic question in sales, in account management, in whatever minor roles that you're doing. And if you don't spend enough time in them, imbibing every single little part, you won't have that knowledge and that wherewithal to really just do justice to that role 15 years later." He was telling me all this, and there was only one thing going on in my head. I was like, holy shit, I have 40 years more to work. then I have so much time to mess up. I have so much time to make mistakes, and I was like, that conversation didn't leave my head. So a month later, this is what I ended up doing. I ended up emailing a company called Elephant Design because I had met the founders on campus. Because I realized that no matter what I do in life, thanks to the IIM Indore tag that I have, I will always end up doing the same role no matter where I am. What will I be doing? I'll be managing people, I'll be selling things, and I'll be making presentations, right? Whether it's cigarettes, condoms, toothpaste, guns, retail banking, irrespective, right? So I was like, if I'm going to be doing the same thing irrespective of my role, I may as well do it in an interesting company. So that's why I emailed Elephant Design. There are a bunch of back then 30 designers. They were a 25-year-old company when I joined them, one of India's oldest design homes. And the whole goal for me was just to learn new things and work with an interesting set of people. And if you see my email, I'm gonna read out one line in this email. Okay, I'm very passionate about it. I appreciate. I'm eager to learn, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So my CV is not here. My CV that I sent, my resume that was attached with this email says hobbies photography, and it was 8 years since I picked up the camera. At Elephant, I genuinely had time to indulge in this hobby of mine, and I remember taking a lot of trips and going to a lot of places, doing a whole lot of things. But it was also at Elephant that I realized that there are career paths beyond what you see at a business school. For I was 26 back then, and the 26-year-old Joe had no idea that there were so many different ways to build a career. I was meeting product designers, industrial designers, space designers, sculptors, graphic designers, to artists, and I didn't even know these that you could build careers in these things, right? And 2009 was also the time my sister got married 10 years ago. 2008 was also a key time for me because my grandfather passed away, and I was just looking at those photos just now, and those are all the photos that I made, because at all times I've always been documenting things in my life. Anyway, so my sister got married in 2009, and during that time I googled the terms wedding photographer India, and only 3 results turned up. All of them were busy, so I deleted India and I just googled wedding photographer, and then this box opened up which I could not believe. Google essentially showed me the kind of things that I did not even know existed, and I was so into wedding photography during those months after my sister's wedding. Sadly, I didn't find anybody for her, but I ended up essentially getting to a place where every single day I would only be looking at wedding photos after December 2009. And sometime along the way, I realized I want to do this. So this is a guy. Till then, for 10 years, I have only been shooting 3 things in life. And everybody shoots these things, by the way, and all of you are going to laugh. One is sunsets, right? Anybody who has a camera, you will shoot sunsets. The next thing you're going to shoot are flowers, right? You always shoot flowers. And the last thing you shoot are insects. Because घर पे बैठ के और क्या करोगे यार, right? So for 10 years that was photography to me. Suddenly, from a guy shooting all that, I found myself wanting to shoot weddings. And on the 2nd of January 2010, this is the photo that I can proudly show you today, where I shot my first ever wedding for a fee. I charged 7,000 rupees that day to shoot this wedding, and I also made the client sign a contract which said Joseph Radhik will miss all the shots because this is the first time he's shooting professionally. I literally knew, because I knew this is still a hobby, and life was unbelievable from this point. This is one of the photos that I shot, and on the 15th of January 2010, Kodak had their first Wedding Photographer of the Year awards, and I submitted my photos. On the 31st of January, the results were announced, and I was nominated in 5 out of 6 categories, including Wedding Photographer of the Year. I was like,
wow,
what? Yeah, and I started a Facebook page. People started emailing me, and I started shooting weddings. This is a wedding in February. This is my own batchmate Neha Govil. Her wedding in March, and by May I was shooting a wedding every weekend. I met with my directors. I said, Ashwini, Ashish, Partho, I'm quitting to pick up wedding photography. And trust me, no other boss would have said what they said to me. They literally told me, Joseph, if you don't quit today, you will never do this again. I was 25 then, right? So they're like, if you don't do this now, you'll never do this. So I said, okay, to hell with it. Let me do this. And I was like, I'm 25. I have 5 years to mess up. Worst case scenario, I will come back to the industry when I'm 30 with an IM background, right? Somebody will hire me. But things would change very dramatically, and I had no idea. On November 1st, 2010, I quit my job. I posted on Facebook saying, now a full-time wedding photographer. And somebody blogged about it. That's why I call this the India factor. Somebody blogged about it. I don't even know who. A journalist read the blog and called me, sent me a request on Facebook, and eventually called me, Rati. And Rati asked me if I can be available for an interview on CNN IBN on primetime TV, and they will film me shooting a wedding. And this is what happened. 15 days later, I was on primetime TV for some weird reason for a 5-minute slot. And then I found myself presenting in creative forums by the end of that month. We're still November 2010. And I was on newspapers called The New Face of Wedding Photography. At this talk, the front row of participants had literally had the who's who of the Telugu film industry. I didn't know them because I don't watch Telugu films. But one of them came up to me and said, Joseph, you have to shoot my friend's wedding. His name is Bunny. I was like, that's a funny name. Then he went away, and then my friend who was standing there with me, he's like, Joe, he's talking about Allu Arjun. I was like, who is that? Let me Google him. So I Googled Allu Arjun, and I was like, oh my God, who is this? So for those who are not in the know, Allu Arjun is literally like the biggest star down south. He's the guy who causes traffic jams everywhere he goes. And in this photo that you see here to the left, that's him on his wedding day. And this was March 2011. From here, I'm going to go really fast. It's the kind of weddings we've seen, that somebody's house in Delhi. We shot a wedding which had 140,000 guests within the first year of me starting off. This is how it looked like.
Wow.
And in 2012, I realized I need my brother to join me. Otherwise, there's no way that I can actually do this myself. So Joshua joined me in 2012 as my CEO, and we started a company called Stories. Stories was founded with the idea of ensuring that this creativity and this wedding photography thing that we have built will live beyond us. That was the idea. As you can see, we didn't even have a PR agency, but we were everywhere. We went to Rome to shoot a wedding over the city. That's literally the Villa Medici. We shot another 100,000 odd wedding in Pune, where the bride arrived by helicopter, this Balewadi Stadium. I shot a wedding in Mauritius, and what you see here is actually just the moon. There's no other light here. This is literally just the moon. And we were recognized for our work in the years to come. This is a champagne bottle right about to fall on my feet during an after party.
There's a small lag, Joe. There's a small lag. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, there's
Your
a small
slides
lag.
are showing after about. We have the champagne now.
Okay, are the champagne now? Okay,
Yeah.
one sec. I guess it's because of the fact that I went into presenter mode, but I guess I have to stay here. Yeah, and you know, all through this journey, we've been blessed to see true emotion. I think that's what literally drives us. Because it's the core of what we do. Emotion is the core of every single photo that we make, and without it, I don't think our photos would be what they are. One second, guys. There is a small issue here. I think I'm going to end up. So what's happening is in OBS. I mean, in our. Sorry for the tech problems in life. Yes. I think this
Like it's making this happen, so we live with it.
Basically, enabler as well right now.
Sorry?
It's a enabler right now for us to meet and
Yeah, that is
interact.
true. That is true. I can't deny that. Anyway, leave it. I think I'll not end up going into presentation mode. I'm just going to end up deleting things right on top. So yeah, so the core of what we shoot is literally all of this. Is literally emotion. It's color. It's exciting things that we shoot. It's joy. It's celebration. That's what we have. And 1 second. I'm trying to get rid of the slideshow controls that are all over this. Hold on a second. Yeah, back to the show. You guys can see this?
We can see the haldi.
Awesome. So you can also see the peacock.
No.
The core of what we shoot is, as I was saying, is emotion, but it's also a certain level of serendipity or a certain level of divine intervention. And it's the same thing that I think, as you will see throughout my career, it's one of the things that we have always said, that it's very difficult to repeat the things that have happened to us, just like in our photographs. Like this peacock will magically appear while we are posing the groom. You can't time these things. We don't know the name of that peacock, and the peacock doesn't come back and ask us for the photo. And the other crucial thing for us is to be in the middle of the celebration, is to be a part of the celebration. So as you can see, most of our photos are always made from a first person perspective, like they're made from the eyes of a friend and not just a passerby. The final aspect for all of our photos is love. It's the one core thing that we rely on in all of our photos. And that love is not just romantic sorts, it's also the family kind of love. So families are crucial to us, friends are crucial to us, and making great photos with friends and family is key to our photography. And finally, there's the same guy who shot sunsets, insects and flowers, also sees photography as this way to see grander things in life. So there is a sense of wow. It's not just from the ground, but also above the ground. That is a small glimpse of our photos. I'm going to go back to the story now, because 5 years after we started Stories, we started another company called PEP. My co-founder is here with me, Arjun Rajan. So Joshua, me and Arjun started a company called PEP, which has the words PEP have stood for a lot of things. I won't get into that. But today they just stand for literally PEP, which is the energy, as a pep talk, right? In 2017, we held our first international conference where we had more than 300 attendees from I think 17 odd countries that came down, coming in from as far as Europe to Indonesia, Dubai, South Africa, Nepal and whatnot. And it was the same year that I was drafted in on Sony's Global Imaging Ambassador program. I was the first Indian on that program. Still am the first Indian, which is very funny. But it was a very humbling year for a lot of reasons, not just because of these two achievements, because it was also the year that I got married. My entire perspective on wedding photography and weddings itself changed after my wedding. I mean, if anybody wants to be a wedding photographer out there, I'd say the first thing is to get married, because trust me, you'll be a master at expecting what clients want from their wedding photography. In the same year, a little lesser known couple got married at the end of that year. Anyway, this is us on our wedding day. This is us every day. As you can see, we don't always make for pretty photos. Anyway, a lesser known couple got married the same time. You might recognize them. This is in December 2017 in Tuscany. These two individuals, so much in love, got married, and we had the privilege to shoot their wedding. And I can't even tell you. I think there's going to be a lot of questions already asking about this wedding and so on. But if I was to tell you how it was to be there, it was magical, because I think I really understood between my wedding and this wedding. I really understood what makes for a good wedding experience, and that is the ability to be able to laugh freely, to be able to celebrate freely, to not put on a show for others, and to just celebrate your love for each other. I think that's what shows. That's the one thing that you will find different in all these photos. Yes, we are the ones who took the took these photos, but at the end of the day, these are also possible only because these two had that much fun. For those who do not know who they are, it was you can see how famous they are over here in this slide. That December, this was the fastest photo to 1 million likes, and it also broke that month's highest liked photo on Instagram. That's how famous these two are. Yeah, and let's get on from there. So 2018 we had another PEP. We went from 300 participants to 1800 participants in Mumbai. It was quite incredible. We were seeing the rise of a photography community, and today during the lockdown, this community keeps us engaged all through. The next year was even more incredible. I will quickly skip to this other notable wedding that we get to shoot in 2018. I've been a huge Priyanka Chopra fan, so this is even bigger than the previous wedding for me. And just getting to work with these guys, getting to be a part of their biggest celebrations continues to be an experience I will never take granted. I will never assume my place here. I'm still, whenever somebody asks me, and this was literally yesterday, I think, when Pranav and Vaibhav were drafting out about what to write and how to describe what I do, I will go back to saying that I'm just the messenger here. We are very blessed to be a part of these occasions. We are very blessed to be to witness these things, and more importantly, we are blessed to be a part of these families. I think that's crazy. And yeah, I'm going to wrap up with a couple of photos from the last 6 months. One was this, which is another 200,000 odd guest wedding that we shot in Haridwar, to our first same-sex wedding that we got to shoot in 2020. So it's a new year. We find ourselves in very interesting times today, where these weddings, and definitely seeing a scene like this, is very uncomfortable to all of us during this time, right? But it's been a blessed journey. I'm not going to actually go on to my learnings. I think there's a lot of questions that are good that have already piled up, and we'll come back to these learnings one at a time, if and when we have the time as well. Yeah, go ahead, guys. Arjun, all over to you.
Hey, thanks, Joe. I think I can speak on behalf of everyone in terms of the journey you have just shared. I've obviously seen you at close quarters for the last 14 odd years, and I'm having so much fun seeing this all over.
Arjun, your voice is lagging, Baba.
Yeah.
There's a
Technical issues with Arjun.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Loud and clear. Back to you.
Yeah, I think I don't know how much of what I said came through, but I think I've known you for 14 years now. And it's been fun watching this at close quarters, and again seeing this here with our tiny IIM Indore community. I say tiny because it's tinier than our PEP community.
That's true. That is true.
So I think there are a lot of questions, and the general feel I got was people want to know, and there's one specific question from Vishesh Singh. I don't know if he's on the Zoom call, but in general he wanted to talk about how to go about planning a creative career. I mean, we know that you didn't really plan this in a sense that you didn't want to become a photographer when you set out.
Yeah.
Look back and looking at the examples we have from PEP, maybe you can share a bit about how does someone who's done an MBA, who's probably working a job now, shift to a creative career?
Yeah. Wow. Tough question. Tough question because I think Arjun nailed it by acknowledging the fact that I didn't plan this, right? So I don't even know how real it would be for me to tell you you can plan this. I think the first thing that I would look at is, first, don't look at your exit. Don't look at the exit from your corporate life. Instead, look at the entry, right? Basically look at where you want to go, not what you want to get out of. I think a lot of us focus on the fact that I want to get out of a corporate career. I don't think that helps, because starting with that mindset is possibly the worst thing that you can do. The best thing that you can do is definitely find and write down or discover the things that you're good at and the things that you think you would enjoy doing for a really long time in life. And trust me, I think the happiest thing about going to an IIM is the fact that question is solved for all of us, because it's the answer to that is, I will really enjoy making presentations for the rest of my life. That's literally it, right? But then that said, if you have a skill, if you have a hobby, if you have a passion in something else, then all of this becomes very easy, because it's much easier to answer what I want to do for the rest of my life than it is to answer how do I get out of this. Because how do I get out of this will just open up way too many possibilities, and that choice is possibly the one thing that will stop you from ever quitting this as well. So yeah, back to this. If you're good at something, if you're really good at something, let's say you're good at design, let's say you're good at anything, yeah. There's so many other alternative careers today. If you're a really funny guy on campus, maybe there's a stand-up comedy choice for you. If you are somebody who loves writing, there is that. If you are somebody who loves talking, I mean, if you are somebody who's very good with your oratory skills, there's a whole different thing for you. And then finally, there's photography as well. If you are good at any of these, the first thing I would say is invest time in that hobby. Invest time in that hobby when you have your job going on, when you have your corporate life going on. Because trust me, others don't have this luxury. Others don't have this parachute that all of us today have. I think there were 300 of us currently listening in on this conversation. Each and every one of us have this ridiculous parachute that we can always just pull and get back and have the safety net, the backup plan, right? Since you already have that, what I would suggest is that you invest time. You really invest time into this and become a master at it, and then let that mastery push you out of your current job, which is what I did, literally, right? I became good enough at wedding photography that I would have literally my entire 3 months were booked out. I had no choice but to quit my job. A lot of people ask me how easy was it to make that decision, and I don't think there was a decision. My clients had already made the decision for me. They were like, Joe, if you don't quit your job, you're not going to be able to shoot my wedding, right? So get to that point. Please don't look at the story that I've told you in thinking that I did my wedding photography from 2010 January to 2010 November and then quit and started off my wedding photography career. Do look at it as I picked up my camera in 2001, and sometime in 2010 I gave up my career to pick up photography full time. It took me 10 years to get there. I do hope that you will learn from all of our mistakes and everyone else out there. Thanks to the internet, it will be a shorter journey for you, but be prepared to invest that time into your hobby. Yeah, back to you, Arjun.
Awesome. I think I'll switch gears a bit here and look at you not only are a wedding photographer today, but you also do corporate stuff, right? And there was an interesting question from Aslam. He's a brand manager, I think it's Sony and Sony Entertainment, and he was trying to ask how to get work done from celebrity photographers, because he's on the other side hiring a photographer, new photographer, and like you, there are a lot of famous photographers, and he was having a lot of angst in his question where he said that they have a tough time dealing with celebrity photographers. He assumes that it will be the same case with you, or at least you will know how to handle them. So talk of this from a brand manager's perspective, a role which you have also played in some way or form at Kodak.
Yeah. Tough question because I happen to know a bunch of these celebrity photographers, as you're saying, right? Tough question also, because I know for a fact that these two worlds work together a lot, but they understand very little about each other. One's entire job description is getting the job done, literally, right? I mean, that's what all of us are about. We are managers, and we are about getting things done. The others is to make something that will live far beyond their lives, and trust me, those two don't come, I mean, they don't go together very well. So if a photographer comes off as stubborn, if a photographer comes off as very I guess very pushy on their vision of things, it's mainly because they don't empathize with the brand manager's role, right? And if the brand manager comes off as somebody who's like trying to get shit done, it's also because the brand manager doesn't understand what the photographer is going through. I think that if at any time you come across a photographer who's very stubborn about their vision, I know this comes off as a very biased, one-sided argument, but try and listen to them, because of the fact that very few artists today have the self-conviction to stand up for themselves, and I think that's a big thing. The few who do end up creating work that shatters boundaries, that shatters norms, and it is easily identified. If there's one thing I've learned in 20 whatever nearly 2 decades with the camera, and being on the other side, it's that the best creative solutions never come out of board meetings, they never come out of group discussions, they almost never come out of PowerPoint presentations. So if be willing to give the creative a chance is all I'll say. I know it sounds very one-sided, but I'll go back to the idea of empathy. I think it's the one biggest thing I have learned in weddings is to understand what other people are going through. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to photograph them in the way I do, right? So it's a great time to actually discuss. Just being open to possibilities is a wonderful place to be. Sorry, what's the name of the speaker? I mean, of the question.
Altamash Aslam.
Wow. Sorry, Aslam. I hope I know this will not directly answer your question, but I do hope at least it shows you the perspective of the photographer who might be a bit stubborn.
But maybe Aslam can send some work your way and solve both problems.
That will be brilliant, right? That's the way to use an alumni network. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question, Joe. You said a couple of weddings had over 1 lakh people, 140,000 odd people attending.
Yeah.
And how do you plan your teams and the execution aspect of it? Because I'm sure the creative aspect is a lot of the individual, right? But there's a lot of logistic operational thing which goes behind the creative person.
Correct.
Actually covering the event.
Correct. Okay, so there's this. I have a really nice way to answer this question, if I may say so myself. I think wedding photography, especially wedding photography, is like a test match. All of us only see the highlights on social media. You see only that, you see like whatever 6-minute highlight reel of a 5-day test match. You don't see all the painful stuff that goes on during a test match, unless you're a true cricket aficionado, right? And the difference here is the family sees every single run that is scored, every single photo that has been made, the family sees it. They are our true aficionados, our true fans, right? So that's why I see that 90% of wedding photography is, as you said, is purely logistics and solving problems. It's literally problem solving, right? So if 100,000 people are gathered for a wedding, definitely the family only wants to see the top 100, 200, 500 odd guests at the wedding, right? Beyond that, they're just numbers. So how do you show the scale of the wedding? How do you show how the 90,000th person in the row, how do they see the wedding? How do you see what they went through, right? All those questions are the simple things that need to be answered. So I have found that breaking down any problem into a series of questions and then just putting photos to answer those questions simplifies everything. So for us, when we typically shoot a wedding, the number one question that is asked is, what did I wear? Who who did I attend, who attended my wedding, who celebrated with me, and how did I feel? I think those three questions, if you can answer at any wedding, right, you've solved everything. Can you see how I've not mentioned composition, light, editing, color, all these other photography nonsense that gets into this thing? These three questions can be answered with even a cell phone camera. What did I wear? Who celebrated with me, and how did I feel? Right? If I can answer these three questions, then 100,000 odd wedding also has questions like this only, right? Like the recent one we shot with 200,000 people. The questions for me were how were 200,000 people welcomed? How were they taken care of? What is the kind of hospitality arrangements that were done for them? These are questions that literally you would not even know in a typical wedding book. So for that client, we decided to make two different wedding albums. One which has the wedding itself, and the other is all of these other things, which is this mela that was made, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we have to get into the nitty-gritties. We had a 52-member crew in Haridwar for the last big one we shot, and that's really not the tough one, by the way. The tougher weddings we've shot, I shot a wedding between two siblings that lasted for 45 days nearly, 45 different events, right? That's a tough one because at some point you start running out of questions. The answers are always the same, right? So that's a tough one, but you'll find, as long as you think logically like this, you're literally listening to an engineer stroke business school graduate talking about creativity. So what do you expect? Yeah. Next question, guys.
So we have some questions from YouTube,
Awesome.
which we've sort of migrated into our Zoom chat here. So Divyanshu Jain and Aishwarya Gupta are asking, how do you prepare to capture the emotions? Obviously, you can't direct like a ad or a movie maker has.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure you can't be everywhere, right? In a wedding.
Yeah.
So any techniques you use, or how do you do that?
I'm trying to see if I can show you, if I can do a share screen.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm not even sure if I'll have to do a little bit of finagling for YouTube. Sorry, guys, because YouTube share screen is not working literally. That's the problem. Hold on a second. So one of the things that I believe in is the fact that I'll go back to empathy, right? I'll go back to that being my keyword. You're going to hear a lot of that from me. I'm sorry if it sounds repetitive, but I truly believe in this, okay? So one of the things that I learned from design is that the human experience matters. It's important to see the end user as a human being and not just a client, right? So empathy is what makes my work original, is what I'm writing here. But to Divyanshu and who's the other one? Sorry? Aishwarya, who asked this question, how do we plan for moments? You don't plan for moments. You have to be present. You have to be present. Let me explain what that means. You have to be in a place where if something happens in front of you, you are not worried about or thinking about something else. You need to have the presence of mind to actually see it. It's very different from observing. Observing means the ability to just keep looking at things, right? And to keep seeing things. Here I'm saying you have to be physically and emotionally present during a wedding. You guys can see this photo, right?
Yeah.
So I've written the time here. So you have an idea of when it was shot. 9 a.m. 21 minutes 45 seconds. And so let me explain the story here. I know for a fact that the bride's mother passed away 5 months before her wedding. It was unexpected. It was a shock. She was very young. And everybody knew this. As far as possible during the ceremony, nobody was bringing it up. But then you know how the Pandit always asks what is the name of the parents, right?
Yeah.
The Pandit asked here saying, "Aapka papa ka naam kya hai aur mama ka naam kya hai?" Right? And it just hit her, right? And there's this, and the Pandit is just going through a reflex. The Pandit is literally, the next thing he's going to say is, "The mother, come on stage, put your hand forward," and the bride started tearing up. I saw this happen, right? And then I got this shot, and within literally there's 20 seconds to go, she's smiling again. You would never be able to capture this photo if you are not listening in and if you are not clued in, right? And I can tell you this example again and again and again in my career. This is an event called a Pelli Kutru or a Pelli Koduku or a Haldi. There were a lot of guests, a lot of photographers at this event as well, and these were the only photos we were getting, which is from the side. It's not interesting, it's quite regular. And somebody said during this conversation, during this event, somebody said bucket ekkadundi, which in Telugu translates for where is the bucket, right? I was like, bucket? So that means something is going to be thrown out of a bucket. So I got into this queue of people who are basically doing this, so that I would be right in front of the groom when that bucket was summoned upon, right? And I ended up with this photo. And again, you will not be able to take this photo if you did not know it was going to happen. And the only way you're gonna know it's gonna happen is by listening and, as I said, being physically and emotionally present. That's the best way I can answer this question. It's a very visual way of answering it, but it's also the best way that I can answer this question. You don't plan for these moments. You are physically and emotionally present. And trust me, there's a great photographer in all of us, because all of us will have that one great photo that we took when the last time all our friends met and something goofy happened. Something messed up, right? And it's not a photo that you take instantly. All of you is like, oh no, I'm going to know this is going to happen, I'm going to take this. It doesn't require clairvoyance or anything. It just requires you to be present.
So the next time I go to a party, I need to keep my camera on. Huh?
Also keep your ears open. Yeah.
Perfect. So Ashish has a question, slightly longer, but I'll try and paraphrase it better.
Sure.
So in current world, everybody wants to work in a niche and a specialty and a super specialty per se. So how do you gradually build your brand or name in a competitive area, and how do you start off? So
could you repeat that though?
I'm saying so his point is that in an era where people want to specialize and super specialize into niches, how do you start off as an artist or a photographer, and whether it should be niche or universal, and then how would you build your brand name in the competitive world today, when there are, like, if you use your example, 2010 wedding photographer India, 3 people, maybe now, I don't know, 3,000?
300,000 actually are the actual numbers, with about 50,000 having Instagram presence and Facebook page, etc. I think Ashish's question also dives into a fact of picking the genre you want to excel in, right? But I will go back to the way I answered the earlier question. There will always be one genre that calls out to you, one genre that you truly enjoy. There is that Ikigai principle. I don't know how many of you have seen it, which is it is the final subsection of what the world needs, what you're good at, what people will pay you for, and I'm missing something, and what you love doing, right? So it is literally all, it's that little bit which all of it comes together. And if you find it, nothing like it. And even if you don't, what I suggest always is, as an artist, so on Facebook, there's my personal profile has had a quote for the longest time. It's this quote saying specialization is for insects. Okay, that was written by me in 2008. It's a quote from, I think, Heinlein or somebody like that. Anyway, that was written by me 12 years ago. And today, 12 years later, 36-year-old Joseph says that's bullshit, right? I think specialization is completely necessary for certain parts of a career. As business school grads and as management grads, all of us know for a fact that being really good at one thing for a certain period of time is invaluable for a career, right? So plan it out like that. So that's why today we are really good at wedding photography. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but today we're really good at wedding photography. So definitely pick your niche. Don't go doing everything. And if you're going to do this as a career, try to find the one thing that you truly enjoy doing and get really good at it. Because if not, then there's no difference, na? You may as well be in your previous career if you're anyway going to do this as a job. Yeah, back to you. I hope that was answered your question in any little way.
Okay. So
there's a couple of questions, Joe, relating to your travel, right? How did your travel experiences, particularly, Mohit Singhvi asked, how did Ladakh impact your life? And there's this question from Shashank Jha also, asking, your cross-country car trip, how did that impact your decision to switch to photography full-time?
I think
So
the
how
cross
did your
country,
is
yeah,
sculpted
yeah,
or
yeah. I think the cross country road trip was the one that gave me that epiphany that all of us spend what 250 odd days at a job of some sort, like a job, right? Sometimes it's at a desk, sometimes it's in an airplane. I don't know. You're traveling all the time, but you spend 250 days in a year working, right? That road trip made me realize that no matter what we do, those 250 days will always be there. For me, it's way more than that, maybe. But I think the best thing that came out is I really wanted to have those 250 days whenever I wanted them, if that makes sense, right? After that road trip, after I came back to office, I was like, I want to go back, right? And you can't just apply for leave and go. That was the biggest reason why I quit to start wedding photography, by the way. Literally, the biggest reason was that I wanted to change my lifestyle. I wanted to have the luxury of doing whatever I want whenever I want, right? Of course, from there the description has changed a lot. That's a different thing altogether. As for the rest of travel, Mohit's question actually is very relevant to me, because I think what happens is, when as a photographer and as an artist, when you switch from being a hobbyist to being a professional, you tend to forget the little things that you used to do that really brought you joy in this, right? So for me, travel is the part that keeps that alive. Travel is the part where I still shoot sunsets, I still shoot flowers, I still shoot insects, right? But now my photos are much better. The sunsets are just prettier. It's maybe because of my skill, it's because I've gotten older, I appreciate things better. But in general, that's literally what I do with my travel. They're completely personal. What I shoot in those times is completely up to me. There is no client, there is no brief, and I'll continue to make photos during that time. I think I'll ask all of you to do that. Hey, I see Viagra's online.
The good thing is only 5 people here know this joke.
That is true. Back to you, dude.
Why don't you tell us something about stories?
Okay.
The company, the business, because all of us obviously understand that aspect also.
Yeah.
So non-creative aspects.
Interesting. Should I go back to share screen is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, sure.
I'm actually not sharing anything in the screen. It's literally the last slide of my presentation typically, right? Which is, I think that if you're going to do this long enough, as managers and as things we've learned, we tend to forget the fact that being an artist, actually, if you want to do it for a really long time, it cannot be a solo race. It can get very lonely if it is, right? So what you see here on the slide today are all these amazing people that I get to work with. Literally, they are some of the best talent in India. They are also people who are not very loud. They will not sit around talking about that talent. So it's my pleasure to work with them, and it's been a pleasure to coach them and bring them here. I think the biggest thing that you will understand if you want to do this is, in the creative industry in general, there's usually a photographer and an assistant, right? And we've tried to change that. I strongly believe, because that's not how I learned, right? I learned photography completely self-taught. I've never been an assistant to anybody. So I have never made that process with my own work. I've never thought of somebody sitting shotgun and learning how to drive while looking at somebody else driving. I don't think that's worked. So each and every one of these guys has their own individual Instagram pages. They have their own individual portfolios, etc., etc. So anyway, I'm going to get down to probably 2 or 3 things that has really made stories work. The first and most important one is critique, and this is something that I've learned from being a manager, right? We all had reviews, we all had appraisals, we all had these pit stops in our careers, right? So you would know that in 2010 I was here, in 2015 I was here, in 2020 I was here. It's very different for an artist, right? Because if you're a photographer, 2010 photographer, 2015 photographer, 2020 photographer. You can give fancy titles, but end of the day, you're doing the same job, right? So then the only way to measure progress is to look at your work, is to look at your portfolio, right? So we have a portfolio review every 6 to 9 months with every single one of them, with every single person you see in this photo. And I think that is critical for an artist's progress, for a professional creative's progress. Forget being an artist, right? If you are as a professional, you have to get better at your craft and you have to deliver more value. That's the way you can do it. So being open to critique and making critique a part of the organizational process has been critical for us. The second big thing is to give credit. If you go to our stories at Stories by Joseph Radek Instagram page, you will see that every one of our photos is credited. This might seem a small thing for those on the outside, but you would be surprised how many studios today run without giving credit to every single photographer that makes those photos. And it's literally because I do this because I'm proud of the images I make, and I want the same thing from every single one of them, right? Finally, it is to understand that creativity is not a one-way road. It's not the straight path. It's this ulta-pulta wala path. Not everybody wants to be a Joseph Radek, right? Not everybody wants to sit here and do these live conversations. Not everybody is as extroverted. Not everybody is even enthusiastic about doing something like this. But a lot of people are much better artists than me while wanting to remain behind the scenes. So you understand that, you nurture that, you literally cater to those strengths, and you let them do that one thing that they're really good at, right? Yeah, that's like a very short summary of what has made Stories work so far. Today we are a company with more than 20 team members with four offices, and yeah, we take up only about 40 odd weddings a year, but that's not due to a lack of capacity. It's due to wanting to keep the brand as niche and as boutique as possible. Yeah, back to you. I'm going to stop sharing.
So another question is, are you looking at writing a book to help people who are interested in photography or in photography as a career, or as a maybe 101 photography for dummies kind of a thing?
Okay.
And maybe it dovetails into PEP or something. Go for it.
There is a book that Joshua and I have always wanted to write for the last 5 years now. It's literally called the ABC of Wedding Photography. It's the shortest, simplest summary of everything we've learned. The art, business and craft of wedding photography. We came up with this in 2016 with the idea that is the simplest way to explain it. I definitely want to write a book, and guys, tell me, is there any other better time to write a book than now? So you will find a lot of other things happening, not just a book, but a YouTube channel and a whole bunch of other things. But yeah, definitely it's on the cards. Yeah.
Sarvani wants to know how she can join the PEP community, and maybe you can share something about that.
Arjun, you want to step in? Talk a little bit about this. 2 seconds.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know how my connection is still, whether it's good enough.
It's good. It's good.
So PEP, we've been running PEP for 4 years now. Go to getpepped.com, GETPPED, getpepped.com. It's a young, hungry community of photographers who are essentially from all around the world, and we do a lot of events through the year. Of course, thanks to COVID-19, we are a bit low on real events right now, but we are still having a lot of active WhatsApp groups, and there's a lot of chatter that's on at PEP. How can you join? Go to getpepped.com. You log in with your phone number and you're into the web app, so to speak. But I think the way we have run the business so far is that it's very high on touch. So we like to meet our people, and we like people to get together. So we are trying to also grapple with how can we get people together, or even new people together, at this kind of a juncture where meeting people is not really possible. Because once you meet, then a lot of possibilities open up. So we are trying to also grapple with that. But long answer short, go to getpep.com, log in, start interacting with the community on Instagram, and take it forward from there. We are going to obviously keep pushing events your way. We'll probably do a large conference kind of event completely online very soon, and that will be a good way to get into the community.
Yeah.
So my request is Arjun and Joe, since we now are beginning to have an active alumni association, and obviously the students on campus are always well connected to that. Just share any events that you're doing, and we'll pass it on through the alumni network, because you're always looking to promote alumni businesses and alumni initiatives.
Sure. Done. Thank you so much. Guys, any more questions? I think we can take 5 more minutes and we can wrap.
I saw an interesting question on psychological health.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So how do you make time for loved ones, and how do you balance life and work? I think that's an interesting question, because you touched upon creative, pursuits becoming lonely at some points. Same time, once you get really busy, there is a chance that you don't get much time. Weekends are usually when people book you for events.
Yeah.
You still manage to meet people, meet friends, keep in touch?
Tough question, because I think for the first 7 to 8 years of my wedding photography career, I've had no time. I'm not going to mince words. I've literally had no time. It's not a career, and I think he nailed it by saying that weekends are the time when wedding photographers are literally the most employed, right? And so that means that we are out of every social gathering that typically happens at during a typical week. So, but the last 2 years I've tried to reverse that as much as possible. I really think that time is something that we take for granted when we have a 5-day work week. Okay, the moment you have a 5-day work week, now everything just falls into place, because when you're going to be free, when you're not going to have enough time, you're going to all of those things. Suddenly, when you have this job, which is work any days of 365 days, you find that all the time that when you are free to spend it, you have no friends to chill with. So you have to set these things on a calendar for yourself. Nobody else is going to do it. You have to do it. And if you can't, if you have somebody who loves you and lives with you, or somebody who's close enough who can actually take these tough decisions, you need to hand over the baton to them and say, these days I will not take up any assignments, make me a part of it, right? Fun fact, till I think 2010 to 2020, I didn't attend a single friend's wedding, because I would always be shooting another wedding on those days, right?
Neha.
Sorry? Except Neha, who hired me to shoot a wedding. So that's literally the one way that I think Neha got me to attend the wedding. But yeah, so I really think that if you don't take those hard calls, nobody else will take them, and it's not something that you realize openly till somebody else actually actively pushes you to do it.
And this is where I think, if I can step in, this is where a community like PEP really helps if you are a photographer. Because you get to meet like-minded people and people who have similar schedules to you.
So last 2 questions, Joe, if you're okay with it.
Yeah.
The first one was, how did this is from Savio Royan on YouTube. How did IIM Indore help you achieve, or what role did it play, or what credit do you give it in the success you've had so far? And the second part is something people have asked me in this last 48 hours while we've been trying to seek registrations is, are you looking at doing a mobile photography course / workshop? And can we do one for alumni, either online or offline, as you once you sort of launch that or have that ready?
Yeah. Okay, the first one was, how did IIM Indore help? I think firstly, the number one thing that I have learnt is no time is wasted when that time is spent in education, right? And for me, the education at Indore was not just the classes and all the assignments and all of that jazz. It was all the people that I went to college with for those 2 years. The 3 batches that I got to see, my seniors, my batch, as well as my junior batch, right? The things that I learned during that time, it was like this fast track course to a career, to the myriad things that are out there. One of the things, I think, I can't pinpoint any specific thing, but if I was to, I remember during services marketing, I don't know whether the man taught you guys, Professor Ram, okay, but essentially he's one of the assignments that we finished, and he saw the solution that I got to, and he literally said, you're going to do all this and you're going to waste it selling soap. So I was like, no, that's not true. But I think the best part that happened was at Indore was the ability to see that there are 10,000 ways to solve one problem, and that there is no one fixed route for any single thing. If that was not integrated in my head, because of the kind of people that I went to, I was very lucky to be in a batch which had a ridiculous amount of diversity. We were in a batch with only 37% engineers. That's pretty nuts. And we were in a batch with I think 60% had more than 80% had WorkX, only 20% were freshers, right? So only 20% of the batch were just nerd engineers. The rest were all people who came with life experiences. You cannot even put the measure of such an experience in any words, right? So that was huge for me, because I got to see the fact that there are many ways to a career. There are many ways to find satisfaction. During placements, I remember there were some of us who were going for all the iBanking crowd. There were some of us like me who wanted the FMCG. There was somebody who wanted specifically a job in ops. Whereas there was even people who were like, do they have a 5-day work week? You know, very specifically, do they have an office in Bangalore? To the 25-year-old me, I was like, huh? How is that, or 23 I was, I think. How is that even a criteria, right? But that was the thing, right? I learned so much during that time. And all of these guys, everybody in my batch, when I was basically going through this decision of whether I should quit and start off, all of them gave me the most level-headed answers on the planet, including the basic questions like how much is in your bank, what is your monthly sustenance, how are you going to, all these questions that I think some of the businesses are asking themselves during the lockdown. What is your runway, etc. were questions that I was asking myself when I quit. So yeah, man, that's Indore for me. I don't have any grand stories on whether the network helped and stuff like that, but I genuinely think that I wouldn't be doing what I was today if it wasn't for my time on that hill, right? As for your second question, yes, Joshua and I both want to launch an online mobile photography course. We'll see how we'll do it. As of now, we want to take in some test assignments types, small batches, very small batches, all live, because I think that's the way to learn, especially if you're not a professional photographer, right? Yeah, we will be. Watch out. I'll pass the news around the alumni groups, etc. But I think even an evening spent like this has made me appreciate the number of ways that you can get things done and get a message across without physically being present at one place, right? So we have a lot of new things to learn.
Arjun, anything from your side?
One question I'm hearing a lot, and which I think Joe can address now, is what would your advice be to someone who wants to have a career in photography, specifically wedding photography today?
An IMI quota.
It's a very different world today to what it was 10 years ago. As you said yourself, it's quite likely that you got very lucky.
Yeah.
Right? And it might be tougher to get that lucky now.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can talk a bit about how to become a wedding photographer today, and how is that different from how your journey was?
I think
we see a lot of this at PEP as well.
Correct. I think the core aspects of getting into wedding photography today, as opposed to even 6 years ago or even 5 years ago, would be the fact that you need to really study up on how to market yourself or how to sell yourself, as well as get the word out that you exist today. Because yes, the first few clients are going to organically happen thanks to your friend network, etc. I think the first thing is just getting an idea of how you get the word out there of the fact that you're a wedding photographer. That's step one, but that's the smallest step. I think the biggest step is, and this is like a secret that I can tell anybody, right? The big one is really understanding what a client is looking for and what makes a bride happy. If you are able to answer that question and you're able to answer it really well with your photos, and you have one happy bride, Joshua keeps doing this, the reverse of the funnel. You know, the funnel that all the marketing funnel that all of us are very well versed with. So it's the reverse of the marketing funnel, which is essentially get one client, make them really, really happy. They will get you one more client, and you'll have two really happy clients then, if you make that second one also really happy, which will become 4, etc. All of us are very used to seeing exponential graphs these days.
Like Corona.
Yes, exactly. So even though it sounds like an exponential graph, happiness is the way it spreads, not surface contact and other things, right? So just aim for really happy clients, man. If you have one client today and you're going to start off with that one client, assume that they're blown away and start from there. The network eventually happens. There is this slide that I have, which I'm not going to share now, but it's like this galaxy of stars, how my journey started in 2010, and I can trace everybody down to Priyanka and Nick and Virat Anushka, every single client along the way who led us to doing that. They didn't happen with us participating in pitches. It didn't happen with us going and telling somebody, oh, you're getting married? We would love to shoot your wedding. It doesn't work like that, because wedding photography is not something that somebody makes a decision with the head. It's completely a decision made with the heart. It's your wedding, end of the day. It's a very sentimental decision, right? And that you can't convince people. You really can't convince people.
There's one more very common question which is coming up, which is, have you got any weird moments on camera, or which are your most oh, you can't hear me?
I'm saying zero funny moments I'm going to share.
Okay. And the last one is, are the celebrity weddings candid photos really candid, or do you like?
I literally just showed you the fact that even our regular photos are like that. I think as cliched as it sounds and as politically right as it may sound, believe me, what I say comes from the heart. I think we're really lucky to be a part of private celebrations like this. This is a kind of photography that nobody ever does, right? The usual photographer gets to shoot, and I have shot celebrities for campaigns. I've shot celebrities for fashion. That equation is very different. It's very transactional. Here, somebody is saying, boss, I'm having a great time with my family. Come spend the time with me, and in return, give me some photos. That's insane. That's insane, man. And the fact that we get to do it, we're really blessed. Okay?
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Joe. I think it's been lovely. It's been a huge pleasure and an honor to have you here. And I'm sure we'll get more feedback after the session ends. But thanks a lot. And we are all with you, the entire IIM alumni network, all of us friends. We're with you anytime you need us. And please feel free to reach out, and look forward to having you again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Arjun. Thanks everybody else for attending.
Yeah.
Let's try and do this more often, at least till the lockdown is here.
Okay. Thank you everyone for signing in and for those questions.
Okay. Joe, you can end the meeting.
Yeah, I'll end it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.